Welcome to Calculus Chat, a weekly discussion with your lecturers for 114. I'm Dr. Biggs, and here with me as usual is Dr. Kellerman
Hello.
and Professor Van der Walt.
Hi.
Okay, so we are now fast approaching, accelerating towards the end, right? We've just written our fifth test of 8. We've handed in our ninth of 15 worksheets, and we're writing our second semester test in the next week. And we only have about another 5.5 weeks of lectures left.
Yeah, we're 60% done, more or less.
Yeah, but I always feel like once you've passed that halfway line, you are barreling towards the end. It just goes by in a fly.
The second half of the semester is always like a hazy dream to me when it's over.
Yeah, and I think you also have to really focus, right? This is the time to really make sure you have got your eye on the ball and you are focused on where you're going and what you're doing. And I think that's often why it's so hazy, is because we focus so much on the immediacy of doing things that it really just flies by.
One does tend to get exhausted towards the end, not just the students, but we lecturers as well.
Indeed.
But it's important to keep your eye on the ball, to keep engaged, to keep working, because everything we're doing now is going to come up in your subsequent mathematics courses next semester, in your second year, and in your third year. I mean, it's not going to go away. So, kind of falling off the bus now is definitely going to cause you problems later on.
Yes, and it's always tempting to think, I don't understand this thing so well now, but in the future, sometime I will spend some time on it, and then I will clear it up. But the problem is, the further you go, the less time you have. Right now is the time to clarify things. If you don't clarify them now, then in the future you're going to have even less time, and you're going to just have gaps of knowledge that grow bigger and bigger, and it's going to be harder and harder to fill those gaps later. So always try and fill the gaps now. Make sure you understand it clearly now.
Yeah, because next semester you've got new things that you need to absorb, and that's going to take your time. I mean, there's some really tough, beautiful but tough mathematics in 1 to 4 next semester, and you're going to be busy with that. And now having a gap now you're basically making it more difficult for yourself to absorb the new material next semester, and then you still have to go back and clarify your understanding of the stuff we're doing now. So yeah, it's just making trouble for yourself.
Yeah. Do not save anything to do later. Do it now.
Also, try to study not to pass the semester, but to consolidate the mathematics permanently.
Absolutely.
So you should be able to apply these calculus techniques years down the line.
Yeah, you don't want to try and re-memorize many algorithms every time you write a test. Then your list of things you're going to have to memorize just gets longer and longer. Much better is to develop a good understanding of what's going on, and then you've got those fundamentals there when you need them.
Yeah, you can always recover specific formulas or tricks if you have a good base understanding.
Yes.
So I myself, I often forget, what is the derivative of arc cos again? And then I quickly scribble out the calculation because, I understand where the formula comes from. And then it's that one. It's the minus one, not the plus one.
Indeed, and for me, this is one of the very beautiful things about mathematics. And even I remember thinking back to my first year, there were many things that I had not memorized, that I did not know. If you ask me what was the derivative of this, I don't know, but I had the good understanding so that I knew enough other nodes that was connected to that one that I could always work it back out.
Exactly.
Yes, you should know the mathematics well also for pattern recognition. If you have it in your head, you can easily look at an expression and recognize patterns, recognize where you could possibly differentiate an expression or integrate an expression to get it into the right form. If you don't know those patterns, then you're going to struggle if you always have to refer to a textbook. So especially during the online teaching mode, some students, there is a risk of neglecting to commit to memory certain basic things that must be committed to memory.
Yes, I mean there are certain things that you just need to know.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to know how to get the formula for a tangent line.
Mm-hmm.
You can also recover this if you remember what the slope is, then you can recover the formula. So then maybe not that. So if you think of tangents, what should you remember about tangent? The slope is the derivative. And then if you know how to write down the equation for a line, if you've got a point on the line and the slope, then you're done. Then you don't need to remember the actual formula, but you need to remember the fundamental thing.
Yes. My rule of thumb was always, if anything is worth memorizing, you're going to use it so often when you're actually doing the worksheets and all the exercises that you will have memorized it by the end of doing them.
Yeah, eventually, you things like differentiation should just become kind of an autonomous response.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened now in this past week? Well, we finished off with our differentiation, right, theme, with a little bit of logarithmic differentiation, which really I think is quite a nifty thing, right? That's
Yeah.
something now that we can deal with something quite strange like x to the power of x and actually differentiate that.
Mm.
And then we also briefly had a look at hyperbolic functions, because, well, those, as we've discussed, are quite special functions, even though we can write them in terms of our exponential functions.
Well, yeah, I mean, these hyperbolic functions, I mean, we can express them quite simply in terms of our exponential functions, but the reason they were given a name, a special name, is because they pop up so often, like this
Yeah,
catenary problem that was on Discord, right? So we give names to functions that are important.
indeed. I mean, there are gazillions of functions out there that don't have names.
Yeah.
And that's mainly because we haven't found a big use for them. If somebody has to construct a new function, build a theory around that function, then they give it a name because now they have got an application for it in some way. And I
Mm.
mean, there are so many specialized functions out there. And yeah, we've touched on that also before. And that was also in our worksheet, right? I threw in, what was it? The product log. Um,
Oh, yeah.
which is not a function you would normally encounter in
Mm.
your undergraduate. But it's for me, it's quite a nice example about how accessible those things actually are. It's
Mm.
just there. We have all the ideas already developed in order to define
Yeah, that was a nice problem. I enjoyed that one,
it. I'm glad.
mostly because it made me think a little.
And then we started a new theme, right? Our applications of differentiation, and we started that off with a bang, looking at maxima and minima.
And next week, we continue with more of these kinds of applications.
Yeah. So, well, what specifically? We're going to have a little bit of a look at how the maxima and minima tie into, well, the derivative, of course, right? So we've already seen the extreme value theorem and how we can use the idea of critical points for finding maxima and minima. But we're going to go a little bit further. We're going to finally get to the point where we have the property that if the derivative is positive, then the function is increasing. But we're going to have to develop a bit of theory to do that. Specifically, we'll do Rolle's theorem and the mean value theorem. And we're going to get to prove those theorems in full. And so we're nicely going to build up this theory and then also look a little bit at the second derivative. And what does that tell us about the behavior of the graph? And how does that tie into maxima and minima? And this then all lays the foundation for some of the applications that are going to come later, specifically curve sketching. And then the big application for me is the optimization problems.
Yes, that's a nice demonstration of how useful very abstract mathematical techniques can be to solve so-called real life problems.
Now, what's interesting to me is also, mathematics to some extent is about being in the right place at the right time. So after Newton and Leibniz laid the foundations of calculus, you suddenly had all these other mathematicians who jumped in and filled in these gaps and details with things like Raleigh's theorem and L'Hopital's rule and so on.
Yeah, so lots of fun still ahead.
Yeah, I saw we had a very interesting post on the Discord server. Mr. Mornay Labuskaghni commented on how much he enjoyed online teaching and how he prefers it to face-to-face instruction.
Yes, I saw that as well, and I thought it might not be a bad idea to well take this topic and chat a little bit about it, and well, among the three of us, reflect on how do we feel about the online teaching. And I think there are certainly certain things that we've learned that actually work much better, um, and new tools that we've learned that can be very useful.
Yes, I think when you're dealing there are definite advantages to of face-to-face instruction over online lectures. But these advantages, in my experience, seem to dissipate the larger the group becomes.
Indeed.
So the great thing about a face-to-face lecture is that it's kind of intimate and personal, and you get to have a conversation with your students.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun.
A lecture with 5 students is a completely different thing from a lecture to 500 students.
Yeah,
I would say a lecture to 500 students is starting to get close to an online lecture.
exactly. And well, I'd even say, 50, even 100 students,
Yeah.
there's still an intimacy there. But when you get to 300 students, 500 students, then it becomes broadcasting.
Yes.
And then I think it is much better to have those things online. The place where I definitely feel, even in large courses, where there is an absolute benefit of face-to-face activities over online is with the tutorials.
Yeah.
Because in the tutorials is when you get to really get some close interaction between the lecturer and the student. You can look a student in the eye and kind of figure out what it is that the student doesn't understand,
Yes.
which in my experience doesn't work quite as well in the online setting.
Absolutely. It is so tricky, especially if you just have that chat to gauge where is the student coming from, and to you can't look at what have they done so far in their work. You can't just help them see what is that conceptual hurdle and help them
Mhm.
just move past that step without spoiling the question for them.
Yeah, one of my old lecturers always said that tutorials are like the mathematical version of laboratory work. And I guess you can't do laboratory work online.
Well, they're trying.
But it is not quite the same.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it is exactly that kind of interaction and talking to one another. And there is something about seeing a person face to face and being in the same space that definitely, and sharing the same paper and looking at the same thing, um, is so helpful and essential in teaching.
Yeah, the other thing is it's much easier to spot the slacker at the back of the class and say, hey, have you started with the worksheet? As opposed to online tutorials where I've noticed a small percentage of the students are just listening in, not really participating.
Yeah, no, I think if you're in the same space, you automatically you have to sort of be more accountable. You're there. The lecturer is looking at you, right? You're speaking to the lecturer. You
Yeah.
can't just write anything because you're seeing the guy face to face. And it might also be a cultural thing that involves with time, but the way we interact in an online environment, the sort of the social norms, are
Mhm.
definitely different from what the social norms are and how you would interact in person.
Yeah.
But I mean, so advantages for me, definitely the Discord is something that
Yeah.
I love. I mean, yes, I would still love to be able to have like personal consultations in an office, but the Discord brings sort of a new way of interacting with a lot of students
Yeah.
to the front, and it means that, I mean, never have I ever interacted so immediately with students all the time
Mhm.
and help them in their thinking as they go on. And the other huge thing there is that they talk to one another.
Yeah.
They can help one another. They can think about a problem and reason it through among themselves. And that's really crucial for learning.
Mhm.
I expect that Discord will continue to be used even when we return to contact classes. There's no reason that
Oh, yeah.
you can only use it with online tuition.
Absolutely. I think that is definitely one of the tools we've learned. And
Mhm.
in one form or another, we will keep on using it,
Yeah.
especially if we now have a large number of students used to that platform and they know what goes on. Then it's easy. We
Yeah.
don't have to introduce them to it. And it's there and it's ready and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Discord, of the Discord server. It does give students an opportunity to talk to each other and to have, you just want to ask a quick question. So I mean, normally you would, do you have to be on campus and then walk to the lecturer's office and then hope that he has consultation and then you can just ask your quick question. So this is a good thing for the students, and I enjoy the interaction there.
Yes.
It could also be a disadvantage though, because perhaps sometimes it's best not to be able to just ask a question if you're doing an exercise and you know that it's Saturday and the soonest you'll be able to ask a question is on Monday, and perhaps by Monday you'll have figured it out yourself in a way that's pedagogically better than if someone simply told you, this is how it's done.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think there is a downside, and I mean, all of these things have trade-offs. But I am also concerned about. I've seen many times students, and I get frustrated myself. It's like, have you thought about this? Have you
Mm.
read the question again? Have you really dug through it, or did you stop at the first hurdle and come and ask us? Because then you're not learning.
Have you actually read the material in the lecture notes and the study guide?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, how do you balance those things? But
Mm.
I mean, again, that is not a problem. I would say that is uniquely online.
No.
I had those students come and ask me things like that as well when we had face to face.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit more difficult, maybe, for them to do it.
Yeah.
So I would say the benefits definitely outweigh the cons there.
Mm. Yes, I mean, and one thing that is a bit more difficult on the online platform, especially in when I'm on one to one or in a small, very small group of students, I like it's called the Socratic method, where you basically ask the student a bunch of questions. So your student says, "Well, I don't know how to do this," and you will ask, "Okay, but what is the definition? Or, okay, is there a theorem? Or okay, what about this?" And then kind of just guide the student to kind of figuring it out himself or herself. This is a bit more difficult online, but still
Yes.
doable.
Yeah, I try and do this in my tutorials, but it gets very awkward when
Mm.
nobody is doing anything in the chat, and you can't tell if anybody is typing or not, and or if there's just deadly silence. And it's not like you can look the students in the eye and then they feel, okay, maybe I need to say something. It's definitely a different environment, and it's interesting because I think we sort of have centuries for of experience about how to do things in this traditional face-to-face way, and even if we don't know it, we are relying on that vast amount of experience
Mm.
for doing things. And I think many things are possible in the online, but it's so young. We've only just started, and so we're still figuring out how to do many of these things in a good way.
You also have very practical advantages and disadvantages. For example, for me, one of the advantages of not going to campus each day is I save a fair amount of time driving in peak hour traffic, and not to mention, I save some nervous energy of having to drive in peak hour traffic.
Indeed.
One of the disadvantages is I get a lot less exercise because, on the University of Pretoria campus on a busy day, if you have to go from the maths building to, say, the IT building,
Mm.
there and back a few times, you can easily walk a few kilometers a day on that campus just
Mm.
going from venue to venue. And so I think I probably get less exercise.
I know I get much less. I mean,
Mm.
I would on a typical day, if you have a course like 114 where you regularly have tutorials and lectures, I could easily do 10K of walking in a day.
Yeah.
Easily,
Yes.
right? That's just getting around campus. You have one or two meetings, you've done it. And
Mm.
you have sunshine, you're getting vitamin D, and it's also sort of it's harder to manage the rhythm of your life if everything is in your home. You don't have what I really miss is the sort of the gearing up for working and then the slowing down from finishing work.
Yeah.
I used to like listen to a podcast when I come home, and then I settle down and now
Mm.
out of work mode. And that kind of divide is now much less. So
Yeah.
it's a whole different way of doing things. And but again, I mean, I love not having to get up in the dark and drive when it's still dark outside, and rather be able to get up much later, have a nice cup of tea just as my lecture is about to start. That's lovely.
But the getting up in the dark, I think, is kind of a uniquely South African stupidity that we start, especially at the University of Pretoria, where we start our lectures at 7:30.
Yeah, no, it's insane.
It's insane. Yeah, no, but I must say, it's a real pity that our students don't get to see the campus
Yes.
because it is really. I come to the office quite often because I need to talk to my postgraduate
Yeah.
students and so on. And our campus is really lovely. I mean, right now it's
Yeah.
autumn. There's a North American tulip tree outside my office here. It is beautiful golden foliage. It's a real pity that our students are missing this wonderful
Yes.
campus.
No, and it's hard to convey the sort of the benefits you get from being in that space. You automatically sort of eased into a different mindset and way about going about life just because you're in that physical environment.
Yes.
But in terms of lectures, I have quite a fondness for this online lectures, especially once you have the
Mm.
interactive things, the pre-recorded with the interactive things, where you force the student to pause. And I
Mm.
mean, I would like to once we maybe get back to campus and you can guarantee it to a much greater level that everybody has access, you could actually force people to all finish those questions before they can go on to the next lecture,
Yeah.
right? And that will keep our students accountable to themselves
Mm.
and give them a good rhythm. And for me, the other thing that is so amazing, and I don't know if this is just me, is the ability to speed up and slow down and watch it at your pace,
Mm.
right? In lectures, I often feel bad because there are some students that are clearly not keeping up, and there are other students that are sitting there that are completely bored because it's going so slow. And this kind of a pre-recorded lecture means all of those people can go at their own pace and they can get the maximum benefit
Yeah.
out of that time. And although the kind of the Socratic questioning and things is important in the lecture, I feel it's much more important in the tutorial.
Yes.
So a hybrid approach might be something where you have these pre-recorded lectures, but
Mm.
then you meet and have good discussions in person, and you can devote more time and have smaller groups
Yeah.
because you've now saved on those resources. So I certainly see things like that
Mm.
developing in our future, kind of learning from this huge experience
Yeah.
and making some interesting plans and trade-offs.
The nice thing about videos is also that students can go back and
Mm.
rewatch a particular portion as many times as they need.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I suspect more students are actually watching our videos than would have physically attended lectures if we had lectures on campus. If I look at the YouTube statistics for our videos, it seems that a sizable proportion of the students are actually watching videos.
Mm.
In a perfect world, of course, we want 100% lecture attendance, but in practice, students often, as the semester progresses, they attend lectures less and less, and
Mm.
your class tends to get smaller as the semester progresses. And so I have a suspicion, but I have no actual way to confirm this, but I suspect that online lecture attendance is better than contact lecture attendance. You know, a student can watch a video any time of the day or night, any day of the week, and I think some of them do that.
There's so much that's different and that we still need to digest
Mm.
and learn from. The other thing that really baffled me a little bit was I used to record my lectures and put them on YouTube for students to go and have a look at. And what used to happen on those recordings is there used to be a huge spike before the semester test.
Oh yeah.
But if you go and have a look at our YouTube statistics, there are no huge spikes before the semester test.
Mm.
Now, I mean, this could be for various reasons. Maybe because now it's the main platform and everybody's watching it, and now you don't see that localized thing so much. Or, but what's going on there? Yeah, it's fascinating.
You know, that is odd because I also many years ago made a bunch of short video tutorials for some of the courses I was teaching, and then tell the students at the beginning of the semester, here are all the videos for the course.
Yeah.
Go and watch them, and then there would be nothing. And then before the semester test or exam, then people will start watching them, or then people will go, "Oh, I didn't even know there were videos."
And by the way, to make it clear, is that's for me is desirable to not have a spike before the
Yeah,
semester test, right?
absolutely.
That's the way you should be learning
Yeah.
is you digest it slowly week by week because these concepts, I mean, our students know by now. There's no way you're going to watch all the videos up to now and have a good understanding of all the material. You need to give yourself that room to learn. You
Mm.
need to do a bit in a week and then you learn that and then you build on it the next week. So I'm quite happy to see that behavior. I'm just fascinated because I was expecting a bit of a spike, and there wasn't
Yeah,
one.
that is odd. So the one thing with videos, which is a danger, is that you can be lulled into the feeling that you're studying very hard by watching the videos and watching lots of them.
Yes.
Um, but
And this is where those interactive questions are for me so critical. You
yes,
have to have points in the video where you are forced to stop and do something.
Yes.
If that doesn't happen, then you'll just sit back, relax, watch videos, and fall asleep, and yeah, you're not really doing anything.
Mm.
And I mean, that's even in our suggestions for the students: is as you watch those videos, you need to be making notes, you need to be thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a way, for me, that's maybe a bad thing about giving students notes and about giving them the video recorded. Is I remember when I was a student, I think in some of the courses we didn't even have a textbook.
Yeah.
You had to make notes of what the lecturer said, and you needed to make sure you understood what the lecturer was saying as he said it, because that was your only source. And
Yeah.
it really forced you to make sure you are understanding what's going on. You're asking questions when you are unsure about something.
Mm.
But it's also, for me, the way you process information. For me, definitely, if I write something while I'm listening to it, I process it better
Yeah.
because I'm hearing it once, I'm thinking about it, I'm writing it down. It's passed through my mind 2 or 3 times
Yeah. Went from your eyes through your brain to your hand at least once.
then.
Yeah, you actually have something called muscle memory. Humans are very tactile.
Yeah,
A large part of your brain is devoted to fine motor movements in your fingers, and I think if you write things down as you study it, it helps you better remember those things.
in my case, tremendously so.
But I also think that this lockdown has created a whole new industry of online education that didn't exist before COVID.
Yeah,
In the past, it was a very specialized thing, and you had very few people really doing online lecturing and online teaching and
Mm.
learning. And when we went online last year, I think there were far fewer apps available for online teaching than there are now. So it
hmm.
spawned a whole new industry. It's like when life gives you a lemon, then make lemonade.
No, I mean the pace of innovation. I mean, both on like the apps that are available, but also what people are doing themselves, what lecturers are doing, and the
Mm.
tools that they are making access that have been available. It's amazing, and I've been enjoying it. There's so much to learn, but some days it is a bit exhausting because it's like you on a whole new fast train that is going somewhere, and it's just flying by all these ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong, making the video lectures is my least favorite part of it because it takes a very long time. But I'm impressed with myself that I, with no prior experience of doing this, can now do basic video editing.
Yeah,
I've learned something. I can do something. Not necessarily very well, but I can do it.
you've got you've got your foot in the door, and sometimes that's the hardest step, is to
Mm,
start. And I mean, these kinds of online skills, I think, are they just going to become more and more important.
absolutely.
I think the academic community needed a push to. Academics resist change, and this was the push that we needed to embrace technology.
Indeed.
Yeah, there's two aspects to that. The first is that yes, universities are notoriously slow-moving institutions,
Yeah,
and that's because they're populated by academics. But also to get to the point where you can make a good online offering
yeah,
takes an enormous amount of time and energy. So if you have to do that while maintaining your face-to-face instruction, it's impossible.
absolutely.
But now we've been given the opportunity to develop some online systems, to create some videos.
Well, we've been forced also because there's no other choice.
Yes, exactly. So now we have a resource. So now it
Yeah.
is no longer this big barrier to entry that, well, who is going to make the 50 videos we need for this course?
Indeed. No, I mean that for me definitely, especially last year, less so this year, but also this year, I'm spending way more time on teaching than I used to. It's much more that needs to be developed and worked out, and how are we going to deal with this? And there's so many normal systems we have in place. I mean, take something simple like an assessment
Yeah.
that is worked out in detail how it's going to work. I can easily get one of our technical senior technical assistants to help have the printer, send it to the printers, have it processed.
Mm.
Now you have to start from scratch. How are they going to submit? How are there going to be multiple attempts? What happens when there's corruption of the file? It's just a whole different ballgame, and you have to develop
Yeah.
so many systems, new systems, right? But once we've
Mm.
we've got some of these systems developed, now it's easier.
Yeah, but I mean, assessment is the one thing that I really look forward to getting back on campus.
Indeed.
I guess as university infrastructure can't really keep up with population growth. In the long run, universities around the world will have to embrace online teaching more.
Or they prioritize and build more buildings.
I,
I think it can go either way.
well, I think this is a problem in South Africa. The population is still fairly fast growing,
Yeah.
and we have not enough universities. I've heard. But in other places, like in Japan or in many countries in Europe where the population is not growing or growing very slowly, they don't really have this problem.
Uh-huh.
They developed their universities massively sort of after the Second World War.
Yeah.
And now that their population is not growing so fast, they have fewer young people. Now, actually, they have kind of the opposite problem. They don't have students to fill these auditoriums they've built.
Yes. Yeah, no, and I mean, in terms of going back to campus, it's looking so uncertain about when
Mm,
this might be the case. I mean, we were hoping for the exam, and we're still hoping that we'll be able to do the exam in person. But I mean, if it looks like there's a big third wave coming, and well, that might just make it impossible.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, this is our reality these days: is we have to live with this level of uncertainty, and well, we have to take things as they come.
yeah.
Okay, well, I think that was a beautifully long session. I hope we didn't go too much over time, but it was a good chat. So, to our students, all the best with your preparations for the semester test and best of luck. Ciao.
Bye.
Goodbye.